Step into the spotlight of Sans Showbiz, guiding you through the stories behind the stars with Nigel Clarkson. Our guest today from the world of TV and news, Dan Walker.
Right, our special guest today on Sound this morning is Dan Walker. Dan, welcome along.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you, sir?
Doing very well. I am, most importantly of all, I'm very much looking forward to coming to Blackpool this weekend. I'm pumped and ready. It's my old patch. I used to live in the northwest.
Right.
Still live in Sheffield, not too far away. I've covered all sorts of stories all over the place. Watched a lot of football up there as well, so I'm looking forward to coming back.
Yeah, so you're going out to Winter Gardens. Have you been performing there before?
I'd love to tell you that I've been dancing in the Winter Gardens. I've only ever been there once for TV purposes, and that was, remember, they do that big sort of pigeon festival.
Oh, I do, yeah. It's a big that, isn't it, in February?
3,000 pigeons all queuing away. So I've been in there for that.
Was that work-wise, Dan, was that, when you came up to do some work? Yeah.
Yes, I'm not a pigeon enthusiast.
Right.
I'm an appreciator of pigeons. So I didn't take my own pigeons there. I was there for Northwest Tonight many years ago. But I'm really looking forward to meeting some people, talking about the book, and having a really good night.
Yeah, so it's a good do, isn't it? Because it's £22 entry, an audience with Dan Walker, and the book's included. Is that right?
Yeah, so actually, it's a bargain. No, because I think that if you go on Amazon, the book's quite expensive. But it's I've done a few of these around the country, and I'm always surprised when people turn up. I love it. I did one last week, and it's just nice to talk about the book. I get asked a bit about career and a bit about Strictly, and always leave some time for Q&A at the end. But the book that I've written, Standing on the Shoulders, I think it's the best thing I've ever done, in terms of the people in there are amazing. And as a journalist, I just love telling stories. I love telling people stories. And, I know you speak to lots of people on Sans Radio, and it's a case of sometimes 5 minutes isn't enough. And, you want to know more about them, what makes them tick, and how they've got to where they are. Yeah. And those are the people basically that I've gone back to and just asked more questions of and tried to find out what makes them tick. And also, most of the people in the book have been in some really difficult and dark places, but they found a way out.
Right.
So there's so much for me, and hopefully for the people who read it, to learn about how would you deal with being in that same situation. We deal with all sorts of subjects, like sacrifice, forgiveness, rehabilitation, even a horrible subject of suicide. There's 3 dads in there who all lost their daughters to suicide. So it's how do you react to that, and how do you as a human come out the other side? And there's people in there who are, have been in a very long tunnel. Some of them are constantly walking towards the light, and some of them have found it and are clinging on to it with all they've got. So I just find them really inspirational people.
So it's very positive, is it, the book, when you're reading it? It's giving you a bit of positive vibes there to get people through bad patches, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's my wife's one bit of advice was don't make it too sad, and I think she meant that really sort of in an important way, because there's hope in every chapter, even though every chapter has got difficult things in it. I mean, there's people like Martin Hibbert, who lost the use of his legs in the Manchester Arena bomb, but has just become the second paraplegic in history to climb Kilimanjaro. He refuses to be defined by the wheelchair that he gets around in. Yeah. And he says it's not my injuries that make me feel disabled, it's the people's attitudes to me that make me feel disabled. There's people in there like Jimmy Olabumni Adewole, who, remember, jumped in the Thames to save the drowning woman and died himself. And I spoke to his best friend and his family and some of his close associates about what an inspiration he has been. And if you like Strictly, I mentioned dancing. I've never been to the Winter Gardens to dance, but there's 2 chapters in there about Strictly. One about Nadia, my partner, who just about her hard work and determination to reach the top and become world champion, and the sacrifices she made along the way, and a bit about our story on Strictly. Yeah. But one of my favourite chapters is about Rose, who won with Giovanni, and her mum Donna, who never allowed her daughter's deafness to stand in her way of having the opportunities that we all enjoy. And she just was determined to make sure that her daughter would be able to knock on every door, and all of a sudden she ends up winning Strictly and fine-tunes all our senses on a Saturday night and probably changes TV forever, if I'm honest.
I love stories like that. I love reading stories like that. Factual stuff as well is probably my best read, to be honest with you. Autobiographies, I read them all the time because you can learn so much from them, can't you?
That's it, and it's all real life. And there's, I found it hard to write some of the chapters because they're so sort of emotionally powerful. But there's 2 chapters which took me a long time to write. There's the 2 men. You remember the man with the narwhal tusk who attacked Usman Khan, the terrorist at Fishmongers Hall.
Yeah.
In 2019. So I spoke to both Darren Frost, who was the guy with the tusk that day, and also Steve Gallant, who was the convicted murderer. And that was his first day out of prison in 14 and a half years. And he was one of those who stopped Usman Khan that day and probably saved the lives of tens, maybe even more people.
Yeah.
And there's that chapter about how they both recovered from that and what they saw that day and how that still impacts on them. And then right at the end of the book, there's a chapter called The Truth About Monsters, which is about 3 amazing women who've all had somebody in their family murdered, and yet they've all somehow, in very different ways, been able to forgive those 3 people for what they've done. Forgiveness is one of those things, isn't it? It's easy to talk about like we are now. When it actually arrives on your doorstep, how does that work out? How do you practically forgive somebody for taking the life of someone you love?
Yeah.
And I just find those 3 women unbelievable and a real inspiration.
And also being involved in Football Focus for 12 years. I mean, you've got all the sports. I mean, there's a lot of engagement in sport and there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Yeah,
and, in my previous book, in Remarkable People, one of the chapters was about Gary Speed and, how he sadly took his own life after coming on Football Focus. And I think in this book, there aren't, I talk a little bit about Gary with the 3 dads who lost their own 3 daughters to suicide. But, football is still very much a powerful heartbeat in my life. I love sport. I did an interview with the last remaining surviving member of the Temptations.
Yeah, right.
And it went off on a bit of a tangent, and basically we talked about the fact there's only 2 things which unite all of us: music and sport.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about sport.
Definitely.
There's certain tracks which just uplift you all or take you back to a place in your life, a time in your life, a person in your life.
Yeah.
And I love that sort of uniting power of sport and music. And one of the chapters in the book is about two men called Paul and Nick Harvey. And Paul is a musical genius who has dementia. Yeah. And his son Nick is constantly trying to encourage him to play the piano, because even though his dad is losing his memories, he's not forgetting how to play the piano, because it's not in his mind, it's in his soul and in his body. And
he
can't lose that. I love that story, and those 2 blokes are incredible.
Yeah, I find that with music, that's why I'm doing as a radio DJ for 30 years now, something like that. I just love music since I was a child. One thing I always did was collect lots of records all the time. People come up to me and say, well, it's in your blood. I say, well, what else should I do? And I say, well, do that, because it's in your blood, Nige. Carry on doing what you really love doing.
That's the amazing privilege, isn't it? It's that thing of being able to do what you love. My great passion, I love music, but my great passion is telling other people's stories.
Yeah.
I love listening to people.
Yeah.
And particularly those people who can't find the words themselves, or can't defend themselves, or can't fight their own battles. Because the one thing God has given me, He's given me words, and I can use them on the radio like now.
Yeah.
I can speak them on the TV, and I can write them in a book. And journalists aren't the most popular people in the world. They're up there with politicians and estate agents, and rightly so on occasions. But you have the power to change the world with your pen, and I think that's a real privilege to be in that position. Yeah,
you're a busy guy though. How do you get the time to write a book?
I don't know. I mean, as I'm talking to you now, I'm preparing to do 2 TV programs today. I've got an interview to do myself in a few minutes with Lenny Henry. I've got to sort the boiler out at home. Got a few issues. I've got practical. I've managed to pull the valve off my daughter's radiator as well. So
I could fix that.
Trying to
bleed
the radiator. I've had a shocker.
Anyway, it's been great talking to you. I wish you all the best on Saturday as well, and we'll pop down and come and see the show. I believe, is there any tickets available? Do you know still?
I don't know. I mean, I did one in Derby last week, and I thought there would be about 20 people there, and I rocked up and the whole place was full.
Wow.
So I don't know.
Dan, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for sparing the time as well, and take care.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
Cheers now. Bye.
Thank you.
If you loved what you heard, make sure to hit subscribe on this podcast channel to never miss an episode. Stay connected and become part of the Sands Showbiz family by following us on our social media platforms. Your ticket to the heart of showbiz awaits every Monday. See you next time.